All right, the plans are already being exposed.
Their Indiana Fever roster, because they had so many injuries, they really did a great job of staying engaged with their season. I can really only imagine for a player like Caitlin, you come off your college season, epic, you go straight to your WNBA season, you finish a first teamer, you have this long off season where you probably can't wait to get back on the court.
We already know how Team USA was planning to build this thing up around Paige Beckers being the point guard, a blasphemous idea.
Only to have like a couple of injuries, sideliner at the ins and the outs, and then eventually being completely out. That is a challenge for a player.
Caitlin Clark officially arrives in North Carolina for Team USA camp. More importantly, we got Sue Bird talking about.
It's just a great opportunity to get their first feel, to get their first taste. But none have had a ton.
Caitlin Clark's arrival at USA basketball camp should have been simple. A proven professional, fresh off one of the most productive rookie seasons the WNBA has ever seen, stepping into the early stages of her international career. That alone is a milestone. Instead, it has quietly become something else. A moment that has exposed how power, familiarity, and long-term planning intersect behind closed doors, and how even undeniable production does not always guarantee clarity of role. What should have been a clean transition now carries tension, subtext, and unanswered questions that stretch far beyond one December training window. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand where Clark is coming from and what she represents. She didn't arrive at camp as a projection or a developmental piece. She arrived as a first-team All-WNBA guard who led the league in assists, broke the single-season assist record, and orchestrated an Indiana Fever turnaround that fundamentally altered how defenses prepared every night. She proved she could run a professional offense, absorb elite physicality, and still tilt the floor with her vision. Those things are supposed to travel. In theory, that resume should slot cleanly into any basketball environment, including Team USA. In reality, the messaging around her arrival has been anything but straightforward.
It's just a great opportunity to get their first feel, to get their first taste. And the other beautiful part about USA basketball, this is when the veterans really come alive, right? This is when they can be a huge part of setting that tone, not just the coaches. But those vets, they've been there, they know what it's like. And with the way that they act, maybe with the way that they...
The tone was set almost immediately. Instead of discussion centered on how Clark fits, how her skill set expands the group, or how USA basketball plans to leverage one of the league's most dangerous playmakers, the conversation pivoted. The emphasis shifted to veteran setting culture, experienced voices guiding the environment, and younger players learning how to move within the system. On its own, none of that is controversial. USA basketball has always leaned heavily on continuity, hierarchy, and institutional knowledge. But context matters, and so does timing. When those themes are repeated while a proven pro enters the room, and when other players without professional resumes are simultaneously framed as future organizers of the offense, it naturally raises eyebrows. Sue Bird's presence looms large over all of this. As general manager, her words carry weight because they reflect how decisions are framed internally, not just how they are sold publicly. When Bird spoke about Clark's recent injury history, the focus stayed carefully placed. The praise centered on mental toughness, staying engaged while sidelined, and navigating the frustration of not being able to play. Those are valid points, but what went unaddressed was equally telling. There was no discussion of usage, workload, or how Clark's body was managed during a season in which she logged heavy minutes immediately after an exhaustive college career. Silence is not accidental at this level. What is left unsaid often reveals more than what is offered.
To how you selected Kara's assistants.
Yeah, Kara Lawson, the head coach of Duke, they're terrible, by the way. How did you come to the conclusion of getting the assistants in Stephanie White?
That omission matters because Clark's rookie season did not unfold in a vacuum. She played roughly 35 minutes per night, one of the heaviest workloads for any rookie in the league, while being asked to create nearly everything for an evolving roster. The Fever leaned into her brilliance, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of design. By late summer, her body showed the strain. Knee issues cost her time, and her rhythm suffered as she tried to recalibrate on the fly. None of that negates her season, but it does complicate the narrative when the same coaching voices now appear in her international orbit. Stephanie White's presence at camp is where the story begins to feel layered. Officially, she is there as a court coach, not yet locked into a permanent assistant role. Unofficially, she is auditioning. USA Basketball does not hand out those jobs casually, and December camps are as much evaluation spaces for staff as they are for players. White is not new to the league, despite being framed as part of a newer coaching wave. She has head coaching experience dating back to her earlier stint with Indiana, years as a top assistant in Connecticut, and most recently returned to the Fever as head coach during Clark's rookie season. That overlap cannot be ignored, especially when Clark's health and usage are already part of the public conversation. The structure of this camp amplifies the stakes. The official assistant coaching staff will not be finalized until much closer to major international competition. That means every interaction now carries extra weight. Coaches are demonstrating alignment, adaptability, and loyalty to the broader vision. Players are being observed not just for performance, but for how seamlessly they fit into the culture USA Basketball values. In that environment, familiarity becomes currency. Relationships built over years quietly shape trust, and trust often determines opportunity long before rosters are announced.
I think it's Nate, it's Natalie Nakase, and Stephanie White.
Yeah, so they're technically court coaches. I'm getting used to all the lingo also. And it's really, the assistants don't get picked or like officially chosen until much closer to the World Cup.
Oh, so they just are they just here for camp? I'm hoping Stephanie White is only here for camp. I hope she's not going to be around for the real thing. Keep talking, Sue. Keep talking.
So there's a lot of time, a lot of buildup. Some of it is, if you look at past coaching staffs, there's been a mix of WNBA and college. Obviously, this camp is in December. You're not going to get college coaches. That's likely not going to happen.
This is where the broader pattern begins to emerge. Paige Buchers is in camp despite not having played a single WNBA game yet. Juju Watkins is invited even while injured, unable to fully participate. From a developmental standpoint, those decisions make sense. USA Basketball has always invested early in players it believes will matter later. Exposure breeds comfort, and comfort breeds continuity. The issue is not that those players are present. It is the contrast created when they are present alongside professionals who have already proven themselves and yet find their roles less clearly defined. That contrast sharpens when Buchers is discussed as a potential point guard option. The idea itself is not inherently flawed. She is a high IQ player with elite feel. But framing her as a future floor general while Clark, a guard who just led the WNBA in assists, is wrapped in language about learning, patience, and fitting in, creates friction. It sends a message, intentional or not, about whose leadership is being cultivated and whose is being managed. All of this lands at a moment when USA Basketball is quietly recalibrating for the future. The dynasty core that dominated the international stage for over a decade is aging out. Succession planning is no longer theoretical. Camps like this are where the next era begins to take shape, not through bold declarations, but through subtle positioning. Who gets invited early? Who gets representatives in key spots? Who is trusted to organize, speak, and lead? These decisions compound over time.
So luckily we're able to tap into what is this newer crop with Nate and Natalie of WNBA coaches. Of course, Steph's been in the WNBA for a while, but none have had a ton of USA Basketball experience. So it's wonderful to get them in. We had a coaches meeting today, and just kind of watching everybody come together and learn. You got to learn the FIBA rules. You got to learn, what it's about, but also being able to showcase themselves as assistants, obviously.
That is why Clark's situation resonates so deeply. She is not just another young star. She is a disruptor, someone who bends coverage, alters spacing, and demands structural adjustment. Integrating that kind of player requires intentional design. It requires willingness to let the system flex. When the messaging instead emphasizes containment, guidance, and assimilation, it raises a fundamental question about whether the system is prepared to evolve or whether it expects even transformative talents to conform. This is not about conspiracy or favoritism in its most cynical sense. It is about institutional habits. Systems tend to reward familiarity. Pipelines form because they are efficient, not because they are malicious. But efficiency can come at the cost of innovation, and that tension is now visible. Clark's presence has simply brought it into focus. Her profile ensures that these decisions are no longer happening quietly. Every rotation, every quote, Every omission is being scrutinized because the stakes are higher. What makes this moment compelling is that it is unresolved. This is the beginning, not the conclusion. Clark has not been marginalized. She has not been sidelined. But she has entered an environment where her role is not yet defined in proportion to her production. That ambiguity is the story. It forces a deeper examination of how USA basketball balances legacy, relationships, and performance as it builds toward the next cycle. As this camp unfolds and future selections approach, the answers will not come from statements or reassurances. They will come from usage, responsibility, and trust when competition sharpens. For now, the questions linger. How much space will Clark be given to be herself? How much will she be asked to adapt to something already in motion? And what does that reveal about how the most powerful program in women's basketball chooses to shape its future? Those questions are why this moment matters now, and why it deserves close attention long before the games themselves begin. To understand the stakes of what is happening at this camp, you have to separate surface optics from structural reality. USA basketball does not operate like a WNBA front office or a college program. It is a closed ecosystem built on continuity, trust, and repetition. Tactical freedom exists, but only after a player has proven they can operate within the system first. That philosophy has worked historically because the talent gap was so wide that adjustment was minimal. The challenge now is that the talent pool has changed. The league has never been deeper with guards who are not just scorers, but true offensive engines. Caitlin Clark represents that evolution more than anyone else, and systems built on hierarchy struggle most when confronted with players who alter geometry rather than simply fill roles. From a tactical standpoint, Clark is not interchangeable with past Team USA guards. She does not thrive as a static spacer or a secondary initiator. Her value is maximized when the offense bends around her gravity. Defenses pick her up earlier, switch more aggressively, and overhelp instinctively. That creates cascading advantages, but only if the system is designed to exploit them. International play complicates this further. FIBA spacing is tighter. The physicality is different. Help defense comes quicker. Historically, Team USA has countered that by relying on overwhelming athleticism and veteran decision-making. What Clark offers is different. She forces defenders to make impossible choices before actions even begin. If that advantage is muted by rigid structure, the team is not just underusing her, it is forfeiting a tactical edge few opponents can replicate. Psychologically, the situation is just as complex. Elite players understand pecking orders, but they also understand respect through responsibility. Clark is entering a space where the language around her emphasizes patience and learning rather than command. That is not inherently disrespectful, but it can become limiting if it persists. Confidence at this level is not built through reassurance, but through trust in high-leverage moments. When players feel managed instead of empowered, they often internalize that constraint, consciously or not. The risk is not that Clark becomes disengaged. The risk is that she becomes cautious, and caution is the enemy of creativity. Her game is built on audacity. You cannot selectively encourage that trait. League-wide, this moment is being watched closely, whether USA basketball acknowledges it or not. The WNBA is in the middle of a generational shift where young stars are not waiting their turn quietly. They arrive with fan bases, influence, and expectations that follow them into every space they enter. How USA basketball integrates that reality will shape its relationship with the league moving forward. If professional dominance does not translate into international opportunity cleanly, it sends a message about what is truly valued. That message will not just land with Clark. It will land with every emerging star who is deciding how much emotional and physical capital to invest in a program long term. Historically, Team USA has navigated transitions before, but the comparisons are instructive. Diana Taurasi was given freedom early because her scoring translated immediately. Sue Bird was empowered because her command stabilized lineups. Maya Moore earned trust quickly because her versatility solved problems. In each case, the system adapted because the upside was undeniable. The difference now is that Clark's influence is less traditional. She is not just a scorer or a facilitator. She is a multiplier. Those players are harder to integrate because they force structural choices. You cannot half-commit. Either the offense flows through her gravity, or it does not. There is no neutral middle ground. The coaching dynamics intensify this dilemma. When staff members are effectively auditioning, risk tolerance shrinks. Coaches trying to prove reliability tend to favor control over experimentation. That instinct is understandable, but it can clash with the needs of transformative players. If the safest path to validation is showing that stars can be plugged in seamlessly, then the temptation is to smooth out their edges. The irony is that those edges are often what separate good teams from great ones. International tournaments are not won on comfort alone. They are won by creating problems opponents cannot solve in a short preparation window. Long term, the consequences of how this moment is handled extend well beyond a single World Cup or Olympic cycle. USA basketball is not just selecting rosters. It is shaping identity. If the next era is defined by adherence to legacy structures rather than responsiveness to modern talent, the margin for error narrows. Other countries are not static. They are building continuity around singular stars and designing systems that amplify them. The gap that once allowed Team USA to dictate terms is shrinking. Innovation is no longer optional. For Clark specifically, the outcome will hinge on whether trust follows production. If she is eventually given the keys in meaningful moments, this period will be remembered as growing pains. If she is consistently framed as a piece rather than a pillar, the tension will linger. Not explosively, but subtly, in the way roles are discussed and opportunities are rationed. Players remember those things. Programs feel their effects later, often when depth charts tighten and commitment is tested. The intelligent conclusion here is not alarmism. It is awareness. USA basketball stands at a crossroads where its past success can either inform its future or constrain it. Caitlin Clark is not a threat to the system. She is a stress test for it. How the program responds will reveal whether it is prepared to evolve with the game it has helped popularize, or whether it will continue to rely on familiar patterns in an unfamiliar era. The answers will come slowly, but the direction is already being set.